Hi, I'm Barry, this is Mega City Gaming, and this is Strontium Dog the Basing. So, hot on the heels of my last video where I made the terrain for this, I will be continuing those series of videos, more interesting because I'll be painting it and stuff. But while I got the box out, while I'm doing stuff, I thought I'd do a video of how to base the miniatures, how I'm going to base the miniatures, not how you should, but it's just an idea. If you're a noob, if you got the Strontium Dog box of stuff because you're like a Strontium Dog fan, but not necessarily a miniatures person, maybe this is going to help. Right. Okay. So what do we got? We've got a whole bunch of metal minis. Some of them are in several pieces. Some of them got separate arms. We've got a whole bunch of bases with the lips, as in like a beveled lip edge. So this is a typical Warlord base. What do we need? We need a box cutter. Possibly some. Yeah. We're going to need these cutting things and a cutting mat. Green stuff. And something I like to use, although it's completely optional, just saves time and means you don't need any talent, is this thing, which is, it's a rolling pin and it's by greenstuffworld.com. greenstuffworld.com is all one word, right? And basically what we're going to do is prepare the miniature and stick some. This is called green stuff or putty, modelling putty. This is Tamiya modelling putty. It's cheap, but you can get green stuff from Games Workshop. Put that on the base and then rolling pin it, the texture, and then stick the miniature on. Yeah. Right. So let's start from the beginning. Jumping ahead a bit. So you got your bases. You clipped them off the sprue. Now the bases have, if you clipped them off like I did, which was very quickly and roughly, they've got bits of plastic sticking out where it was attached to the sprue. You really do need to cut these off, otherwise that's the first thing everyone's going to notice when they look at your miniature, is these bits of plastic sticking out the base. It looks bad. So do this. You might as well, it's very quick, you might as well just do all the bases in one batch, get them all done, which is what I'm going to do now. I have finished cleaning up the bases so they're all smooth around the edge. People's eyes are not going to be distracted by bits of plastic sticking out your base. Next thing, this is going to seem a little bit harsh, but the bases that they come on, the bases that the miniatures come on, aren't what we want. Yeah, we want the miniature and the base we're going to make to blend seamlessly, which means we have to cut off the base, the metal bit at the bottom. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use these clippers. These aren't anything special. These just cheap old cutting snips, and we just cut around the feet. Yeah, get big bits of metal off that. So we cut around the feet as close to the feet as possible, so there's no excess sticking out the sides. Yeah, go all the way around. Make sure it looks as organic as possible. That means natural and curvy, not jaggedy and sticking out. Yeah, go all the way around, cut it off. Right, there we are. Now we have a miniature that has, looks like platform shoes, which all the rage in Japan since forever, and they're never going anywhere because, yeah, perfect for people who have a height complex. Right, and then you get your box cutter and go in and cut the platform shoes off, leaving a little bit at the bottom, maybe 1/2 mil, because you're going to be squishing it into the green stuff on the base, so you don't want it to be buried. You don't want to lose too much height on the miniature. And do the other one. You could always do it with this as well. I've done that as well. So one of them I did with this, which was not so tricky, but definitely needed a bit of force. And with these, you just snip it off. Snip. That's it. Job done. Problem with these, you end up with a triangular raised area, so you need to go in with this and just shave off the bottom so the soles of the feet are flat. Right, and that's what we got. Next thing we need to do with the miniature is go around and scrape off, using a box cutter or whatever blade you got, scrape off the mold lines like this. Imagine you're peeling a potato, but don't use any force really, because the mold lines on these are very shallow and don't need much persuasion at all to get lost. So yeah, so usually the mold line goes, because imagine you've got a two-piece mold squeezed together, then you put the lead in or whatever, and the line is where the two molds meet, so you know it goes all the way around the edge and in a straight line, so it's very easy to follow usually. Some of the more complex models have more complex mold lines, but these are just simple all the way around mold lines basically, so very easy to follow, and also very easy to see what is a mold line and what isn't if you know where it's going to be. So these are very easy to get rid of the mold lines all the way around. Right, job done. Just one last check for mold lines. Make sure the light catches it, because sometimes you miss a mold line because you're not working in decent light. Like right now I'm not working in decent light, and then you have to tilt it and see if the mold line catches the light. So yeah, but these I mean, you don't have to do the mold lines, but if anyone who is into miniatures sees a model that's been painted with mold lines, they will see the mold lines and not really notice the paintwork, because the mold lines will scream, look at me, don't look at the paintwork. Yeah. Right, okay, so that's the first. I'm going to do the whole lot. Yeah, so basically do all the bases, scrape the edges, then cut all the bases, cut all the metal bases off the miniatures, and cut the platform shoes so they're more natural. Scrape the mold line, do the whole lot in a batch, and then I'll get back to you. The next thing you're going to need to do after scraping all the mold lines off and removing the base is to give them a wash, because these were made in a mold, and in order for the hot metal not to stick to the mold, they used mold release, which can be either like a talcum powder or a kind of like a Vaseline kind of thing. So these have probably got some mold release on them, even the resin ones. So both the resin pieces and the metal pieces, everything needs a wash. It's very simple. Run it under the tap, give it a bit of a thing with a toothbrush, get in all the crevices. Don't have to be too thorough, just make sure you get all that stuff off if there is any. Right, let's do that now. And then what I do, usually I just do them all in a batch and then plop them into a paper towel and just leave them there to dry. And here we have the washed miniatures. So like I said, run under the tap, give it a bit of a brush with an old toothbrush. Make sure it's an old toothbrush, and then just plop them into a tea towel. I kept the pieces of miniatures that are separate, like the arms and bits. We'll stick those on later, but just put them separate so they don't get lost in the maelstrom of miniatures. Right, next we let them dry. So I waited a bit for them to dry, and they're kind of dry. I patted them. You can, you know, force dry them, use the force, or a paper towel. Yeah. So what you're going to need now is, these are from earlier. Here's some I made earlier. So you're going to need some water, and I've got like a palette, and I'm going to drop some water in one of the sections. You're going to need some water, basically. A cup of water and a saucer or something like that. And your green stuff or your Tamiya putty or whatever you want to use. So Tamiya putty or green stuff comes in strips of 2 different colours, and basically you mix them together. And it creates putty, and it dries out hard. Right, so you're going to want to wet your fingers, yeah, hence the water. You're going to have to wet your fingers, stop it sticking to your fingers too much. So basically get a blob of one colour, not getting too much right now because we're just demonstrating. It's also worth not getting too much at a time because it does dry out. So I just do small pieces at a time and then make some more. So a blob of one colour and then the same amount of the other colour. So I use this quite a lot for all my bases. So make sure it's the same amount. You can eyeball it, you don't need to weigh it out or get the calipers out or anything. Right, pretty much the same amount, 2 balls of the same amount. Yeah. Right, wet your fingers again. So as you noticed, I put them into the water, yeah, because then it won't stick to anything. Then smush them together and mix it up, yeah, like plasticine. Mix it up so it's all it's good that it's 2 different colours, so you can tell when it's mixed properly because it all becomes homogeneous, yeah, not two-tone, so it all becomes homogeneous. And so we mix it up thoroughly. If you don't mix it properly, it won't dry properly, basically, and you'll get like soft bits. Right, then pretty much done. Then you put that back in the water. You get your base. You want the lip facing upwards with the Warlord Games logo on the bottom, lip facing upwards. Then you pull off some of this, basically a pea-sized portion, not very much at all. You stick it on there and you think, oh, that's never going to cover it. You'll be surprised. So you basically smoosh it around with your finger. You can always add more if it's not enough. Yeah, smoosh it around with your finger. Smoosh it around with your finger till it meets the edge. Yeah, you don't want to go over the lip, but if you do, it's not an issue. Definitely not an issue. Right, so you go up to the lip, over the lip, whatever, and then you're going to need a toothpick or something, some tool, any kind of tool really that isn't going to stick to the green stuff. Wet it, yeah. Basically, you're going to skim off any overhang off the edge of the base. Yeah. So, like I said, it doesn't matter if you go over over the lip. You just skim it off, yeah. Scrape it off, and then you add it back to your ball of green stuff. Right, so that's basically one of them almost done. Add some water to the top. I'll show you why in just a moment. Make sure it's thoroughly covered in water. Also, you can smooth out your fingerprints because it will have fingerprints from when you smooshed it in there. You just rub it a little bit with water and the fingerprints will disappear. Then you take your green stuff roller or anything that has texture on it, any texture you want to add to your base. I've used netting, I've used bits of plastic, you can use rock. Make sure whatever you're using is wet, yeah, make sure it's wet. You could even dip it in there, yeah, make sure it's wet, yeah. Some people use Vaseline, that can work, but if you do use Vaseline you have to wash it off the base before you paint it, otherwise your paint ain't going to stick. Right, so make sure it's wet, and then as the name suggests, you roll it over the base, and there you have a textured base. Yeah, it's very simple, but you can make it look very awesome by painting it and adding tufts, which I'll show you later. Right, so you got the base, it's textured and stuff. How do you get the miniature on there? I'll show you in just a moment. You might want to let it dry. In the meantime, while that's drying, you can do some more. Do another base, yeah. Again, pinch off a pea-sized portion. Make sure your fingers are wet, and stick it on the base. Smoosh it out. Smoosh it out. Smoosh it out. So do a few at a time. Let them dry, and then I'll show you how to stick the miniatures on. Again, scrape off any excess, which there shouldn't be much. Put it back onto the blob. Rub out your fingerprints. Yeah, don't want no evidence. Don't want no evidence, do we? Right, there we go. Rub out the fingerprints. So again, it's best to find a different place on the roller or whatever texture you're using, and then roll it out. Oh, right. If that happens, which it will do sometimes, because I've used it a few times and it wasn't wet enough, basically. So the more you use it, the more sticky it gets. Don't worry, you can either start again, which I've done a few times before, or you can just use a toothpick, and because this kind of texture is rough ground anyway, so you just smoosh it in and give it a bit of texture with your toothpick. Yeah, I mean, you could just use your toothpick and just score in some lines. I do that for the urban bases. I just score in some paving slabs for my Judge Dredd miniatures or whatever. Yeah, so there you go. That's the second one. Doesn't look like much now, but you'll see when it's painted it's going to look awesome. So again, let's do another one. Smoosh it in, smoosh it round, smoosh it in, smoosh it round, scrape off the flange, scrape off the flange, scrapey scrape, 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 scrapey scrape, 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 scrape. Put that back on there. Rub out the fingerprints, destroy the evidence. Make sure this is wet. Make sure it's wet. Yeah, we want lube. Get it lubed up, and then stick it on. There we go. Right. And if it's not, because these bases have lips, you don't get as much impression as if they didn't. So you can augment it with your multi-purpose tool, sonic screwdriver or toothpick. Yeah, can augment the lines with your toothpick. Right, there you go. So that's 3 down. Right, now let's start putting the miniatures on them. So that one I messed up, I decided to do again before I put the miniature on. Now basically smooth it out, just use your finger, smooth it out. Yeah, like as in we were doing for the fingerprints, but you can just add some water to your finger, smooth it out, as long as it's roughly like so. Then do it one more time. Yeah, just lots of water on there, and then don't press so hard this time, and that's better. We get a nice imprint on that doesn't stick to the roller, and then we can add a bit more detail using toothpick, multi-purpose toothpick. There we go. Right, so now I've got 4 done. Right, let's stick them to the miniatures. Right, once the bases are a little bit dry, as in the water has been dried off, not the actual green stuff. So the green stuff should still be soft. So basically like a couple of minutes, basically, because green stuff takes a lot longer than that to dry. I'm using Gorilla Glue. You could get away with not using any glue, to be honest, but I like to be sure it's going to stick. So basically a little bit of Gorilla Glue or super glue even on the feet, just a little bit, and then we take the base, put it on a flat surface, and let's move that out of the way, and then stick it on. Just basically push down into the green stuff. And because the shoes or the boots have a little bit of extra metal on the bottom, because I cut the bases off, then it shouldn't look like they're sinking into the mud, and that will stick. And what I like to do is, just to be sure, I lean them up against something. I've got my phone here, just to make sure they're at a good upright position, not leaning back or leaning forward too much. And that's it. Hold the position by making sure that it's supported by something like my phone or my laptop or something like that. Just make sure there's somewhere to lean it, so it doesn't, because I've had them before where I thought, oh, it's nice and sturdy, it's not going to fall over, and then I come back an hour later and it's like it's fallen very slowly, slow motion fallen, and then I have to go back and glue it again. Not a big deal. Again, if that happens, you just gotta glue it again. Yeah, just get right back on the horse. Right, let's do another one. So this is Sticks Brothers. Just make sure this is dry. Again, use the force dry, or a paper towel, and then a little bit of Gorilla Glue on the soles of the feet. On the soles of the feet. Come on. There we go. Just helps it stick, really. And then get a base. Make sure that's not wet, and again stick it, push it into the green stuff on the base, and again it should stay up by itself. But make sure it's straight, and then lean it up against something so it doesn't fall over. Is that straight? Standing up straight, upright, not leaning forward, leaning back. There we go. Just make sure, because it really does my head in when they're leaning forward too far, like some miniatures. There we go. Right, that should be fine. And just repeat as necessary. Again, it's very simple. You don't need to use one of these. You could just use a toothpick to get the same kind of pattern, random kind of cracked earth pattern, or like I do for Judge Dredd, I use this to make paving slabs, or dungeon tiles or whatever. It's very, very simple. Don't be afraid. Or you can use like other things to do an imprint. Anything you want. It's so versatile. I have primed the models. As you can see, it's not 100% coverage. There's a lot missing on the undersides, mainly because I spray paint in a box, cardboard box on my balcony. Right, first thing I'm going to do is stick the miniatures onto the old GW pot, empty or dried out, and I'm going to do a very quick touch up with some black. Yeah, black. Whoa, that came out quite strong. Unfortunately, I don't have a wet palette, so I'm going to have to use it up before it dries, but that's okay. I've got a lot of miniatures that need touching up. I'm using an old what's it called, army painter brush, which is, I used it for a good year, I suppose, before it went all like splayed. So I went ahead and painted all those models, and I forgot to make a video of it. And I also decided that as I'm not a pro painter or anything like that, you know, and the camera angles and stuff, it's not so easy to get. So I decided not to do a full painting video. However, I am going to show you how to do the bases, because someone asked how to do the bases, and so here's a finished miniature, and get the lighting, and so as you can see, it's like brown with kind of light brown over the top, and yeah, anyway, so you've already seen how I put the green stuff on the bases. So I'm going to show you how to paint the bases now. So I'm going to start with these are all primed. I've already painted the rest of the miniature, just undercoated, and so well, I'm going to paint the whole base, including the edge, dark brown. Yeah, this brown is called Dirt Spatter. It's Army Painter, and I'm only using it because I want to use it up. If that runs out, because it's quite near the bottom, I'm going to switch to what's that, Chocolate Brown by Vallejo. I did use this before, and then I decided, well, actually the Army Painter paint isn't as good and I want to use it up, and so I just like used it on the base. So you use your crap paint if you've got any crap paint, just for the first coat on the base, because it's going to get mostly covered up anyway. So just make sure it's a really dark brown, the darkest brown you have, or thereabouts, because it'll be basically the colour of the cracks in the cracked earth. Yeah, so I'm showing you how to do this. Someone asked me, I can't remember who it was, and I wrote a big long explanation of how I did it, and then I realised that if it was me, I just wouldn't read it because, you know, I don't have the exact paints, or I never have the exact paints of whenever people do that, and I never know what actual colour they're referring to, because, you know, that involves looking at colour charts on the internet and stuff like that. So I decided, sorry you can't see, can you? Ah, knocked one over. So I decided to go ahead and do this. So I kind of started making that painting video, and then that was kind of mothballed, as in just put aside, because yeah, like I said, there are much better painting videos out there of real painters. So I like to focus on one particular aspect of painting that I think is good, or if someone asks me anything about something, or if I'm painting terrain or whatever, you know, something that I can at least do a reasonable job at. Right, there's one. What I like to do is I like to do them in batches. I usually do them in batches of like 8 or something, but I've got these 3 up and ready, and these are on larger bases. I chose the larger bases so you can see a bit more what's going on. So I'm just going to do these other 2. So I'm painting the next one. I'm using this is the next stage. It's all dry. I didn't paint the skulls because they're added on, but I did paint the dirt being kicked up. I did paint that the brown, dark brown colour. Any rocks and stuff like that, you also want to do that colour because it's part of the ground. Anything that isn't part of the ground, just leave it. So this colour is called cork brown. Cork brown. Right, and I'm painting the solid pieces of dirt, the bits that stick out, and leaving the cracks dark brown. You might find like here there's a whole area where the green stuff roller didn't leave an imprint. In this case it's because there's a lip on this base and the green stuff wasn't deep enough to get imprinted. In that case you can make your own shapes of rock. Like that, if you want. It's very easily done. There you go. I'm using a Tamiya #1 brush, my 3mm flat brush, simply because it's quicker, get a lot more coverage, and this is pretty easy to paint. There's no talent involved whatsoever in getting paint down on this. And don't worry if you make a mistake, you paint in the crack. It's easily fixed. Just get a thinner brush and just paint the crack, or it'll probably in the next stage be fixed anyway. Naturally, you'll see in the next stage. So my first impression when I first used cork brown the first time to paint the slabs of solid ground was, wow, that's really bright, it's gonna look crap. And yeah, it is really bright, but I stuck with it, I persisted, and I thought, okay, this is basically how my whole model looks. My whole model looks crap until I add some shade to it and stuff like that. So I persisted, and then I came out with some quite good results. So like I said, this colour scheme on the bases is my preferred colour scheme because it matches pretty well the mat that I use, which is Wasteland by GameMat.eu. Right, that's pretty much done that one. There's another one that I did just now. Well, I forgot to press record on the video. So I've just got one more to do. And I'll do that right now. Right, this is the last one. I'm just showing you one further point. These dirt pieces being kicked up again, if you've got any rocks or any things that are actually part of the ground, like this is like I said, dirt being kicked up, just going to go and overbrush using the cork brown. Just overbrush it. Yeah, there you go. Bit of an overbrush. So it's obviously the same colour. Get the lighting. Yeah, this is why. There you go. That's why I'm not doing a painting video as such, because my camera's not good enough, my lighting's not good enough, my painting's not good enough. So yeah, there's, like I said, there's loads of decent painters out there doing much better videos about their painting. Right, okay, so they're done. Again, waiting for that to dry, and when that's dry we'll do the next step. Next up, quick reminder that anything you have on the base should be also painted. For example, these skulls I just painted. I do like painting skulls and stuff like that, like a rotting flesh or a bone white colour or something like that, not white if possible. Yeah, it's kind of a yellowy white, if that makes any sense. Right, next up we're going to use Agrax Earthshade Liquid Talent. I just realised I've got hardly any left. I'm going to have to go to Games Workshop tomorrow and get some more. Luckily there's a new Games Workshop not far from me, so there you go. Although, to be honest, last time I went there I bought some liquid green stuff and it was solid. Yeah, so I got, I wouldn't say ripped off, but the product I bought was utterly useless. Right, I'm using a huge brush simply to save time, and I found that at my level of painting I get pretty much the same results as if I'd used a smaller brush for this stage. So long as you don't get any pooling of quick shade, earth shade, whatever it's called. And you want to do, again, you want to do the whole base, the sides and all. Yeah, you want to get the whole base, sides and all, the whole thing, mate. Including anything you've got stuck to the base, like a skull, or you know, whatever you got, ammo crates. Right, so that's it, done whole model. Gonna leave that to dry. That's going to take a lot longer to dry, obviously. I'm going to do the other two. So there you go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. They've all been quick shaded or Agrax Earth shaded, and they're going to take a long time to dry, as I said literally seconds ago. So far, quick recap: dark brown, do the whole base, yeah, whole base, including the edges. Cork brown, or a similar colour, light brown basically, on the parts of the earth that are not broken, just the tops. And then Agrax Earthshade, the whole thing. Don't forget to paint any extra bits on the base. So obviously waiting for that to dry. I'm also going to be using this brush again as a dry brush, so I have to wait for the brush to dry too, and that's going to take a while. It has to be dry for the next stage, the final stage. Dun dun dun. Actually no, not the final stage, second to final stage, penultimate stage. Right, these guys are pretty much dry now. I have been joined by guest star. So the next stage is dry brushing. This dry brush is I guess it's dry. Ideally you'd want it as dry as possible, but anyway, for the purposes of this video. Next up, it's Dark Sand by Vallejo. Dark Sand, basically it's a sandy colour, and we're going to dry brush highlight very subtly the tops, bring out some detail on the bases. So let's put these two aside and let's just do this. So this is a very quick stage. You don't need a lot of paint at all. Let's get my cloth. That's cloth with an F, of course, because I'm English. Right, or from the south, if you prefer, the deep south. Right, just a little bit of that, little bit of the old dark sand. Dark sand. And as this is a dry brush, we get enough on the brush to cover the brush, and then we wipe it all off. Not all of it, but you keep wiping until you're not painting, you're kind of scraping the paint off. Yeah. And as always with a dry brush, you want to go in very lightly at first. Yeah, that's bringing out, it's very subtle, but it really does bring out detail. Yeah, and you don't need to do under the miniature or near the feet, because miniature's got shadow, you know what I mean? Miniature's got shadow in it. So if you just highlight the blank bit of bases, the bit of the base that is sticking out, and not, you don't have to do under the miniature or anything like that. Yeah, it's pretty subtle. And then the last one, see, like I said, it's pretty quick. That's why I do a batch at a time. So I paint a batch and then I do the bases all in one go, which is why that GW hand gripper thing is not any good to me. I bought one and I haven't used it yet because I need like 8 of them because I do 8 at a time, unless I just keep pulling the miniatures off and putting them on that, which means I'm touching the miniature, which defeats the whole purpose. Right, so as you can see, I've done them. You can't really tell on camera too much apart from this one here, but it really does give more depth to the base. Makes it a lot more realistic and more stunning. Yeah. Right, next up, Schwabaway. Right, so my preferred Schwabaway is by Warlord Games, and they're made by War World, and there are several different kinds. I use a couple of different ones because, you know, Schwabaway isn't all the same colour, of course. My favourites are Patchy Tufts and Wild Meadow Tufts. I've tried several brands and I find this Warlord War World brand to be the best. I've tried Games Workshop, I've tried some other ones. These are the best I've found. And yeah, so basically you get all different shapes and sizes. The bigger ones, like these bigger tufts, I save those for like huge based miniatures where there's a lot of blank space. The smaller tufts is what we're going to use for these bad boys. Well, actually I might use a medium sized tuft. Yeah, let's use a bigger one for one of these. And basically, if you've got an area on the base that you're not happy with, yeah, you want to cover up, then stick a tuft on it. Yeah. Also, if you've got a big blank area, stick a tuft on it. Yeah. Right. So how do we do that? Basically, well, we've got like wood glue, PVA glue, or white glue, and squeeze a little bit onto the palette. That's it, just a little bit. Okay, and I've got a pair of tweezers. You can use your hands. I just find tweezers to be a bit easier. Right, let's get that packing out of the way, it's annoying. Right, let's get one of these medium-sized tufts. There's quite a big tuft here. Let's use that. Again, you can use your fingers. Let's use fingers. Let's pull it off. It's stuck by some kind of like gum. And you can just stick it to the base, although it will probably come off if you just use the gum. You can use super glue, I guess. I use white glue, like that. The underside is coated with white glue. Right, and I'm going to stick it right here. Meow. Guess it's nearly feeding time. No, it isn't nearly feeding time. What are you asking me for food for? So there you go. The white glue will dry clear, so don't worry if you can see it. Like, you can see it right there, but that will dry clear, so have no fear. And there you go. There is a tuft of grass on the base. There we go. Right, I'm going to do another tuft on this one, another one on this one. I'm going to use a smaller one for these. Let's use a different colour. Right. Let's use, so that one was patchy tufts, and this one is wild meadow tuft. It's going to use a smaller one. So for the smaller ones, tweezers are a bit easier to manipulate. And you can stick it pretty much anywhere you want. Don't stick them all in the same place on the bases. You want to mix it up a bit. Right, there you go. Let's turn that around, because sometimes the grass is all facing one direction, and as it probably would be in reality. There you go, nice tuft of grass. And let's do one more. Right, let's do another medium tuft on this one. I'm not sure what the ratio of large, medium and small tufts are on the average, in the average pack of tufts, but there's not too many large tufts, so that's good, unless you're basing, but you know, even if you are basing a large base army, you can just put two smaller ones together. Right, so I like this side of the base because the highlighting came up really well. This side of the base there was a lot less detail, so I made up, I painted in the cracks, so I'm just going to cover that up. There you go, nice bit of tuft, bit of shrubbery. It's not technically shrubbery, I know. I might put another smaller tuft on this side. Don't be afraid to use two tufts. I could even do a different colour, two different colour tufts on the same base. You're mad. But it looks like, yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? Just for the sake of showing you. And let's use, this isn't a large tuft, it's kind of a long one. They're all different shapes and sizes, as you would imagine. in real life. Let's get that off the thing. Come on. Getcha. Yes, sometimes they get like a little bit stuck together, and you want to be a bit careful because you can misshape the tuft a bit. Right, get the last bit of glue on that. Let's put, I need more glue. More glue! Right, not too much, just a little bit of glue. There we go. So don't pull too hard. Stick that on that side. I do like the highlighting on that side, so I'm going to stick it by the foot of the beast, the mork. The mork. So I think actually when Strontium Dog was created and was in its heyday, the Mork and Mindy was still on the TV. Right, in England anyway. Right, okay, they're done. See this one, I've got two different, sorry, the lighting is terrible. My heart is. I am going to let those dry and then I'll take some photos. So after this stage you can highlight your model up if you've got any highlighting to do, add any extra details, whatever you want to do. I'm pretty happy how these turned out as they are. Like I said, liquid talent, yeah, you don't need to be able to paint to get like this kind of result, yeah. So get yourself some Agrax Elf shade or any other shading. Army Painter do some quick shade, they do some good ones. Go for the sepia ones if you can. That's it. Okay, let's get these bad boys on the table.